Every level of tyranny. Explained. Level 1. Restriction of freedom. Every tyranny begins with the loss of small freedoms. This stage often looks harmless, even reasonable. Governments justify restrictions as temporary or necessary for safety. But once freedom of speech, press, or assembly is weakened, it sets the foundation for more control. Adolf Hitler, Germany, 1933. After the Reichstag fire, Hitler passed emergency decrees restricting free press and public meetings. It was framed as protecting Germany from communists, but it silenced opposition. Benito Mussolini, Italy, 1920s, restricted labor strikes and censored socialist newspapers, claiming it was to preserve order. Joseph Stalin, Soviet Union, 1920s to 1930s. Early in his rule, Stalin clamped down on independent newspapers and banned opposition parties within the communist framework. What looked like protecting the revolution quickly turned into a complete monopoly of speech and political life. Level 2. Manipulation of truth. The second level is far more dangerous, controlling what people believe. Tyrants understand that if they can control truth, they control thought. Propaganda, censorship, rewriting history, these tools shape reality itself. Once truth is manipulated, people can no longer judge what's real. Saddam Hussein, Iraq, built a cult of personality, putting his image in classrooms, TV, and posters. Every achievement was credited to him, while failures were blamed on foreign enemies. The Chinese government runs one of the world's most sophisticated censorship systems, known as the Great Firewall. Independent journalism is heavily restricted, and social media platforms are tightly monitored. Stories about corruption, protests, or issues like Hong Kong and Xinjiang are either censored or replaced with state-approved narratives. This allows the state to maintain control by shaping what over 1 billion people perceive as truth. Level 3. Economic control. At this level, the ruler controls money and resources, economic freedom disappears, and citizens become dependent on the state. If you control food, land, jobs, and wages, you control survival. Tyranny strengthens when people cannot live without the system. Mao Zedong, China, through the Great Leap Forward, forced collectivization and put farmers under state control, leading to famine and tens of millions of deaths. Kim Dynasty, North Korea, 1948 to present. All means of production, land, and food distribution are state-owned. Citizens are given ration cards, and survival is tied to obedience to the regime. Economic control reinforces absolute political control, with famine used as both a result of mismanagement and a tool of repression. Napoleon Bonaparte in France, early 1800s, implemented the continental system in 1806, a massive economic blockade aimed at cutting Britain off from European trade. He forced allied and conquered states to comply, making their economies dependent on France and his military enforcement. While it hurt Britain somewhat, it devastated many continental economies and increased resentment toward his rule, showing how controlling trade routes and markets was central to his power. Level 4. Erosion of rights. Here, rights that protect individuals vanish. Laws are rewritten not to serve the people but to protect the ruler. Courts and parliaments lose independence. Discrimination and selective justice become the new system. Nazi Germany, 1935. Nuremberg's laws stripped Jews of citizenship, making them legally second class. Apartheid South Africa. Racial laws denied most rights to black citizens, forcing them into separate schools, neighborhoods, and jobs. Augusto Pinochet, Chile, 1970s, dissolved parliament and suspended the constitution, ruling entirely by decree. Level 5. Suppression of opposition. At this stage, dissent is no longer a matter of debate. It is a crime. Political opponents, activists, journalists, anyone who resists is silenced through jail, exile, or death. Fear replaces discussion, and opposition parties vanish. Vladimir Putin, Russia. Opposition leaders are jailed, exiled, or mysteriously killed. Alexei Navalny, Russia's most vocal critic, was imprisoned and poisoned. Independent media is labeled as foreign agents. and shut down. Even peaceful protests are crushed with overwhelming police force. Francisco Franco, Spain, mid-20th century. Opposition was outlawed for decades. Political prisoners filled cells, while executions and censorship erased all dissent, keeping Franco unchallenged until his death. Level 6. Open oppression. At this stage, tyranny removes all pretense. Fear is not enough anymore. Terror becomes policy. Instead of targeting individuals or opposition groups, entire communities are crushed. Genocides and wars of aggression marks this stage. The state rules not by law or persuasion, but by blood and violence. Citizens live under constant fear of death for who they are, not just what they do. Pol Pot, Cambodia. In just 4 years, 1975 to 1979, his Khmer Rouge regime killed nearly 2 million people through mass executions, forced labor camps, and starvation. Intellectuals and city dwellers were targeted simply for existing. Bashar al-Assad, Syria. During the civil war, his regime used chemical weapons on civilian neighborhoods, bombed hospitals, and starved cities under siege, killing hundreds of thousands and displacing millions. Ottoman Empire, 1915, Armenian genocide. The government systematically deported and massacred over 1 million Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks during the World War I, erasing entire communities from their homelands. Joseph Stalin, Soviet Union. Though earlier levels fit him too, his Great Terror and deliberate famines, like Holodomor in Ukraine, led to millions of deaths, showing that oppression can be both hidden and openly violent. Level 7. Total tyranny. This is the end game of tyranny, totalitarianism. At this stage, the regime doesn't only rule your body, it seeks to rule your mind. Every part of society is absorbed into the state. Schools don't teach knowledge, they teach obedience. Newspapers don't report truth, they spread propaganda. Art, religion, and culture are erased or reshaped to glorify the leader. Fear is permanent, but it's not enough. The ruler demands love, loyalty, and worship. People are not allowed private lives. Even family conversations may be spied on. Thought itself becomes a crime, and silence can be punished as resistance. This is when human beings are turned into tools of the contemporary surveillance states. In some modern countries, authoritarian leaders use AI surveillance, digital tracking, and censorship to monitor citizens' every move. Dissent can be erased with the push of a button, making technology the new tool of total tyranny. Fulgencio Batista, Cuba, pre-Castro, 1952 to 1959. Batista's Cuba was a mafia state. He ruled through fear, censorship, and secret police. Dissent was crushed brutally, laying the ground for Castro's takeover. Robert Mugabe, Zimbabwe, 1980 to 2017. In his later years, Mugabe turned Zimbabwe into a near-totalitarian state. The economy collapsed under his control. Opposition leaders were beaten or killed, and propaganda portrayed him as the father of the nation who could not be questioned. Rafael Trujillo, Dominican Republic, 1930 to 1961, ruled with an iron fist for over 30 years. His face was everywhere. Bridges, monuments, even churches had to display his portrait. He renamed the capital after himself, created a massive cult of personality, and his secret police killed tens of thousands. Even private conversations weren't safe from surveillance. The lesson is clear: tyranny grows step by step. It starts with restrictions that seem harmless, but if unchecked, it ends in absolute control and unimaginable suffering. Understanding these 7 levels is not just about history, it's about recognizing patterns today, so tyranny doesn't rise again tomorrow. Thank you for watching. If you found this valuable, hit like, share it, and subscribe for more deep dives into history and power.